My family told me to stay quiet, but I can't hold it in anymore. Come, sit with me for a while. The evening light is gentle in this room, isn't it? It filters through the tall, mullioned windows and catches the dust motes dancing in the air, turning them into a swirl of tiny golden stars. This house has seen so much. It has stood on this hill for over 100 years, a silent stone witness to our family's triumphs and our tragedies. You, my grandchildren, know it as a place of comfort and security. You know the worn velvet of the drawing room chairs, the reassuring scent of beeswax and old paper that permeates the library, the proud, unsmiling faces of your ancestors staring down from oil paintings in the hall. You see this estate, this legacy, this immense enduring fortune as a birthright, a testament to generations of hard work, good breeding, and impeccable honor. It is a beautiful narrative, and every brick of it is cemented with a lie so profound, so all-consuming, that it has hollowed me out from the inside, leaving behind nothing but a fragile, brittle shell of a woman. I know you're here because you want to know more about this story you've stumbled upon. You're holding that old dusty suitcase, and you deserve the truth. But before I open it, before I shatter the very foundation of our family's history, I must ask for your patience. Stay with me until the end. What I have to tell you is not a simple story. It's a confession. A confession I have rehearsed in the silence of my heart every night for 60 years. And if this story of mine, this unburdening of a weary soul, resonates with you, perhaps you could do an old woman a kindness. Like this video, and subscribe to this channel. My days for telling stories are numbered, and this is the only one that has ever truly mattered. You all grew up with the ghost of my brother Daniel. He wasn't a physical ghost, of course, but a phantom of reputation, a cautionary tale whispered to naughty children. Daniel, the black sheep. Daniel, the reckless charmer who broke our father's heart. The official story, the one carved into our family's lore, is that Daniel, my older brother, was a wastrel. He was handsome and brilliant, yes, but he had a wild streak, a thirst for adventure that curdled into irresponsibility. The story goes that he fell in with a bad crowd, made foolish investments, and when his debts mounted, he committed the ultimate sin. He stole a significant portion of our father's ready capital from the safe in the library and fled in the middle of the night, leaving behind a cruel, unapologetic letter, never to be heard from again. It was a scandal we weathered with quiet, stoic dignity, but the betrayal shattered our father. He was never the same. He became a harder, sadder man, and a part of this house died with his spirit that day. It is a plausible, tragic story. It explains the sadness in your great-grandfather's eyes in his later portraits. It explains the conspicuous absence of any mention of his firstborn son in the family annals. It is a neat, tidy explanation for a painful chapter in our history. And every single word of it, from the reckless investments to the stolen money to the cruel letter, is a lie. A meticulous, calculated, and soul-destroying lie that I, his little sister, constructed myself in the corner of my walk-in closet, behind the winter coats and the scent of mothballs, sits a small, unassuming suitcase made of faded gray cardboard. It is not locked. It holds no treasure. It holds something far more valuable and far more dangerous. The truth. It is my confessional, my personal tomb, the only place on earth where the real Daniel still exists. It holds the evidence of my crime, a crime committed not out of malice, but out of a desperate, twisted love. For decades, I have been the keeper of two histories, the one the world knows, and the one that has been slowly eating me alive. The world remembers my brother Daniel as the villain of our family's story, the selfish son who nearly ruined us all. The truth, locked away in that humble suitcase and seared into every fiber of my being, is that Daniel was the sacrifice. The golden lamb I led to the slaughter to save everyone else. The truth is that the villain of this story, was me. Before I show you the contents of that gray suitcase, before I expose the brittle bones of my lifelong deceit, I need you to understand what I destroyed, what we all lost. You must understand the Daniel that was, not the phantom I created. Inside the suitcase, on top of a pile of brittle, yellowed letters, lies a single photograph. It is my most cherished and most cursed possession. In it, 2 children are sitting on the branch of a great oak tree that still stands on the west lawn. The boy, who is perhaps 10 years old, is laughing, his head thrown back, his dark hair falling into his eyes. He has his arm wrapped protectively around a smaller girl of about 7, who is beaming at the camera, her 2 front teeth missing. That boy was Daniel. That little girl was me. I look at that photograph and I can still feel the rough bark of the branch under my legs. I can smell the freshly cut grass. I can hear the sound of his laughter. That was my Daniel, my protector, my confidant, my entire world. He was the golden one, you see. From the moment he was born, he was destined for greatness. Our father, a formidable man of immense pride and unbending principle, saw in Daniel the perfect heir. Daniel was everything he was, but better, quicker of wit, more charming of manner, with a smile that could disarm armies. I remember standing in the doorway of the library, watching them. Father would be teaching Daniel the intricacies of the family ledgers, the management of our vast land holdings, his voice booming with pride. "You have a good head for this, son," he'd say. "You will make this family proud." And then he would glance at me, a mere girl in a dress, and his expression would soften into something like affectionate dismissal. "And you, Eleanor," he'd say with a pat on my head, "you shall marry well and run a fine house of your own one day." It was the way of the world then. Daniel was the vessel for our family's future, our legacy. I was merely a passenger, and I felt no resentment. How could I? I adored my brother. His victories were my victories. The sun rose and set with him as he grew into a young man. His golden light only seemed to shine brighter. He was brilliant at university, a natural leader, a man other men wanted to follow, and women wanted to love. Our father was ecstatic, already planning the day he would hand over the reins. But when Daniel came home to begin his apprenticeship in earnest, something was different. At first, the changes were subtle, almost imperceptible, like the first hint of autumn in a summer breeze. He seemed tired. There were faint, dark circles under his eyes that his charming smile couldn't quite erase. He became restless, prone to bouts of moodiness he would quickly cover with a joke. He started receiving visitors at odd hours, men with slicked-back hair and expensive suits who never came to the front door, preferring to meet him discreetly in the gardens. When I asked, he would just laugh it off. "Just some business associates, Ellie," he'd say, ruffling my hair like he did when we were children. "Nothing for you to worry your pretty little head about." Then came the requests for money. It started small, a few pounds here and there. "I'm a bit short until my quarterly allowance comes in," he'd whisper, his eyes avoiding mine. "Don't mention it to Father. You know how he is about finances." I gave it to him without a second thought. He was Daniel. He was good for it. But the amounts grew. The reasons became more vague. I started to feel a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. The breaking point came in the form of a letter. It arrived with the Morning Post, on thick, expensive cream-colored stationery, addressed to Daniel. He was out for the day with my father, inspecting one of the tenant farms. I saw the return address, the name of a man I knew by reputation only, a notorious moneylender from the city, a man known for his ruthlessness. A cold dread washed over me. This was no simple gentleman's debt. I told myself it was wrong, a violation of his privacy, but my trembling hands had a will of their own. I took the letter to my room. and using the steam from a kettle, I opened it. The words inside were a death sentence. It was a final notice. It spoke of promissory notes, of leveraging estate holdings, of collateral that I couldn't comprehend, but knew was ours. The number at the bottom of the page was so staggering, so astronomically large, it didn't seem real. It was a sum that would not just inconvenience us, it would obliterate us. It would mean the sale of this house, of our lands, of everything. Our family had built for a century. It demanded payment in full within the week, or the process of seizure would begin. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had to sit down, the letter shaking in my hand, the room spinning around me. That evening, I waited for him in the library. When he came in, humming a cheerful tune, I held up the letter. The color vanished from his handsome face. The charming smile dissolved. For a moment, he looked like a terrified little boy. He tried to lie, of course. He blustered and stammered, calling it a misunderstanding, a threat from a business rival. But I just stared at him, my heart breaking, until the facade crumbled. And then came the confession. It came out in a flood of shame-filled, desperate words. It had started with small card games with university friends, he told me. The thrill of the win, then bigger games. Horses. He discovered the illicit, high-stakes gambling dens in the city. He lost, then chased his losses, convinced the next big win was just around the corner. He borrowed from one man to pay another. He told me he was in, so deep, he had done the unthinkable. He had forged our father's signature on documents, promising our lands as collateral to this moneylender, this shark. The final desperate gamble was a massive, speculative investment in some foreign shipping. Venture, a scheme that had collapsed entirely just last week. The debt was due. And there was no money. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands, his body racked with sobs. He was not a monster. He was a sick man, a man consumed by an addiction that had devoured his soul. He confessed that he knew the truth would kill our father. The shame of it, the dishonor, would literally stop his proud, frail heart. "I'm ruined, Ellie," he cried, his tears soaking the priceless Persian rug. "I've ruined us all." He clutched my hands, his own cold and clammy, his eyes wild with a terror I had never seen before. "You have to help me. You're the smart one, the steady one. You have to find a way out. Please, Ellie. Promise me you'll save me. Promise me you'll find a way." I looked at my brother, the golden boy, shattered and broken before me. I looked around the library, at the portraits of our ancestors, at the physical embodiment of our family's legacy, all of it about to be turned to dust. And I promised him. "I will, Daniel," I said, my voice sounding strangely calm, strangely distant. "I will find a way. I promise. I will save our family." He looked at me with such gratitude, such desperate hope. He never could have imagined what my salvation would look like. He thought we were fighting his demons together. He didn't realize in that moment that I was about to turn him into the demon in everyone else's eyes. The night that followed Daniel's confession was the longest of my life. Sleep was a mercy I was not afforded. While the rest of the house slept, wrapped in the quietude of wealth and ignorance, I wandered these halls like a restless spirit. I found myself in my father's study, the epicenter of our power, and now our impending destruction. The full moon cast a pale, ghostly light through the tall windows, illuminating the leather spines of the books that held generations of wisdom, and the silver frames that held the smiling faces of our family. The air was thick with the scent of leather, pipe tobacco, and the lemon polish the housekeeper used on the furniture. They were the smells of stability, of permanence, smells of a world that was about to evaporate. I spent hours in there, in the darkness, weighing my options. There were only two, and they were both monstrous. The first was the truth. I could wake my father, sit him down in his great leather chair, and tell him everything. Tell him that his golden son, his perfect heir, was an addict, a liar, and a fool who had gambled away our future. I pictured the scene vividly, his face first confused, then disbelieving, and finally crumbling into a mask of heartbreak and shame. The dishonor would be a poison pill to him, a man whose identity was so intertwined with our family name. I had no doubt the shock would kill him, and even if he survived, we would be ruined. The creditors would descend like vultures, and the public scandal would destroy our name forever. The truth was an apocalypse. And then there was the other option. An idea that began as a sinful whisper in the darkest corner of my mind, and as the hours ticked by, grew into the only logical choice. It was a cold, surgical, inhuman logic. If the problem was a gangrenous limb threatening the whole body, then the limb had to be amputated to save the family name, the family home, and my father's heart. One person had to be sacrificed. Daniel. His crime was unforgivable, but his greatest offense, at that moment, was his weakness. I had to be strong for both of us. I rationalized the act not as a betrayal, but as a sacrifice. I would sacrifice my brother's reputation to save our legacy. I would sacrifice my own soul to ensure the survival of our line. I would become the silent, uncredited guardian of our fortune, a secret villain in the role of a dutiful daughter. That night, in the cold moonlight, I chose my path. I chose to become a monster to fight the monsters at our door. My plan required meticulous precision. The next night, I waited for the house to fall silent, for the lights to go out one by one. Then, barefoot, I slipped into the study. My first act of treachery was forgery. I gathered a stack of Daniel's old letters, his journals from university, anything I could find in his distinct hand. Under the single beam of a desk lamp, I began to practice. I studied the way he looped his capital D, the lazy slant of his words, the florid signature he used with such flourish. My hand trembled. At first, the nib of the pen scratching, blotting the ink, but as the night wore on, a cold calm took hold. I wrote page after page, mimicking his script until it was indistinguishable from my own. I crafted 2 crucial letters. The first, a short, arrogant note to Daniel's primary creditor, essentially telling him he had no intention of paying and good luck finding him. The second was my masterpiece of cruelty. It was a letter to our father. In it, I had Daniel confess to stealing money to cover personal expenses, express a fabricated resentment about the pressure of being the heir, and end with a cold, dismissive farewell. Every word I wrote was a stab to my own heart. The second act was the staged theft. I knew the combination to my father's safe. He had told it to Daniel in my presence years before in a moment of paternal pride. One day, this will be yours. To protect, he had said. The irony was sickening. With my heart hammering against my ribs, I knelt on the rug and turned the dial. The soft clicks sounded like cannon shots in the silence. The heavy door swung open with a low groan. From it, I took a calculated amount of cash, enough to look like an act of desperation, but not enough to harm us long term. I also took a few small items of sentimental value to my father, a pair of gold cufflinks that had belonged to his own father, and a gold pocket watch. I placed them in a velvet bag, creating a thief's haul. The final, most cruel act was my last conversation with Daniel. I met him the next day in the garden gazebo, our childhood hiding spot. He was pale and anxious, desperate for news. And I lied to him, with the straightest face I could manage. "I have a plan, Daniel," I said, my voice steady. "It's complex, and I can't give you the details, but it will work. I've spoken to an intermediary. He can make the creditors go away, but it will cost. And it requires absolute secrecy. Father can never know. I gave him the velvet bag with the cash and heirlooms. "This is a down payment for our intermediary," I lied. "But the most important part is that you have to disappear. Just for a while. A month, maybe 2. They can't find you. Go to the seaside town of Whitby. Get a modest room and wait for my word. Contact no one. I will handle everything. Do you trust me?" His eyes filled with tears of gratitude. He hugged me tightly. "I knew you'd do it, Ellie. You were always the strong one." He trusted me. He trusted his little sister to save him, never knowing I was giving him the money to finance his own permanent exile. The morning after he left, I executed the final part of my plan. I went to my father's study before he awoke and left the safe door ajar and the forged letter on his desk. Then, I waited. When I heard him come downstairs, I forced myself into a panic. I ran to him, my eyes wide with fear. "Father, the study, the safe." My performance was flawless. I led him to the crime scene I had created. I saw the confusion on his face, then the concern, and then the icy rage as he saw the letter. I stood by my father's side, placing a comforting hand on his shaking shoulder as he read the cruel, forged words I had written. I watched his heart break in real time. I saw a great man wither and shrink before my eyes. A cry of pain and fury, a guttural, animalistic sound tore through the morning quiet. "He is no son of mine," he roared, ripping the letter to shreds. "His name will never be spoken in this house again." In that moment, I had saved our family's fortune. I had secured our future. But as I held my sobbing father, I heard the sound of my own soul shattering into a million irreparable pieces. And the worst part, my plan wasn't even finished yet. The cruelest part was yet to come. The aftermath of Daniel's flight was strangely quiet. The storm I had anticipated, the public scandal, never materialized. My father, heartbroken but still a master of self-preservation, used his influence to quash the story. The creditors were quietly paid a fraction of what they were owed, convinced by my fabricated intermediary that pursuing the matter publicly would be fruitless. The family drew together, closing ranks around the wounded patriarch. To the outside world, it was a regrettable but private family tragedy. Our family name survived, tarnished only in the whispers of high society, but financially intact. I had succeeded. I had slain the dragon. No one seemed to notice that I had become a different kind of monster in the process. Life in the house went on, but it was a parody of what it had been. A fine dust of sorrow settled over everything. My father, once a force of nature, became a specter haunting his own home. He would spend hours in his study, not working, but simply sitting, staring at the empty space on the wall where Daniel's portrait used to hang. He never spoke his son's name again. Daniel's name was erased from our conversations, from our history. It was as if he had never existed, and I had to watch it, day after day. I had to play the part of the dutiful, supportive daughter, bringing him his tea, reading to him, comforting him in the grief I myself had inflicted. In an ironic twist of fate, with Daniel gone, my father began to rely on me. I, the daughter he had intended for an ornamental marriage, became his confidant and apprentice. I learned the business, the properties, the finances. I inherited the role that should have been Daniel's. I was given the power and responsibility he was meant to have, and every small success, every pound saved, every acre of land improved, felt like ashes in my mouth. It was the bitterest inheritance a soul could bear, but that was not the worst part. It was not living with my grieving father, nor even the weight of managing the family fortune. The cruelest part of my plan, the final stroke that destroyed not just Daniel's life, but his spirit, was yet to come. And it is all documented here, in this very suitcase. After 2 weeks in Whitby, Daniel's first letter arrived. He sent it to a convenience address I had arranged, a post office box under a false name. His handwriting was rushed, anxious. He wrote, "Ellie, it has been 2 weeks. Is the news good? Is father well? I feel like a rat trapped in this hole. Please tell me when I can come home." I read the letter, and I felt a physical pain, a knife twisting in my gut. But I did not reply. A week later, another letter came. "Ellie, I am beginning to worry. Why do you not write? The money is running low. Is the deal still on? Does father know I am safe? I miss home so much." And again, silence was my only answer. The letters kept coming, week after week, month after month. They grew more and more desperate. Hope turned to confusion, then to fear, and finally to heartbreaking agony. This one, from nearly 6 months in, is the hardest to read. "Sister, is that how you see me now? A stranger? What did I do to deserve this silence? I trusted you. I put my life in your hands. You told me to run, and I ran. You told me to wait, and I have waited. Does my father hate me? Is that it? Have you abandoned me too? Please, Ellie. One word, just one word to tell me you still remember me." Every letter I read was a form of self-flagellation. I would absorb them, let their pain sear me, and then I would place them in the suitcase, my catalogue of sin. I knew that to reply, even with a single word, would be a risk. It would be a loose thread that could unravel my entire fabrication. To ensure he never came back, to ensure the threat was permanently neutralized, I had to make him believe he was completely and utterly alone. I had to break his heart so completely he would never dare to seek the path home again. My silence was the final murder weapon. So here it is, the contents of this suitcase. Here are my forgery practice sheets, the proof of my calculated fraud. Here is the cruel, lying letter I wrote to our father. And here are Daniel's letters, nearly 50 of them, tied with a faded silk ribbon, the chronicle of a man's hope turning to dust. And finally, here is the photograph, the laughing boy and the smiling girl, the before, the proof of the love I claimed to have, a love I used as my justification for the most inhuman act a sister could commit. Years later, when my father was long gone and the family fortune secure for generations, I hired a private investigator. I had to know. I owed it to his ghost. The investigator found him, or rather, his trail. Daniel never left Whitby. He lived a small, anonymous life, working as a dockhand and later, a clerk in a chandlery shop. He never married, never had a family. The locals knew him as a quiet, sad man who kept to himself. He died of pneumonia in a harsh winter, aged 42, in a lonely rented room overlooking the gray sea. He died thinking his entire family hated and had abandoned him. I tell this story now not because I seek forgiveness. There is no forgiveness for what I did. I tell it because the debt has been paid. The family fortune, which you will inherit, was purchased with my brother's life and soul. When you look at the portraits on our walls and the vast fields we own, I want you to know that the foundation of it all is the broken heart of a good man. I want Daniel's name to be cleared at last, even if it means my own is forever cursed. I was our family's guardian, and I saved them. But the price? The price was the soul of a brother and my own. The question that haunts my every waking moment is this: was I a savior or a monster? Or is it possible to be both at the same time? You tell me. I have been asking myself the same question for 60 years,